Hi everyone, it's so nice to meet you today. My name is Pastor Tina and I am going to teach you how to paint a wonderful painting today. Today we are going to paint this painting right here. This is a form of painting called pointillism where you use tiny dots to make your picture. One dot all on its own just looks like a plain old dot, but when you put a lot of them together, you can get a really nice picture. So that's what we're going to work on today. I have here another one that I've done in the past with a little bit of a different pattern, but we're going to focus on making this one here today. We're going to change up the colors today too, so I hope you enjoy. If you have other colors at home, feel free to mix that up as well. Now we're going to talk about all the supplies that we need. Hopefully you have all of those at home. The first thing you need is an 8x8 canvas, so that's 8 inches by 8 inches. You need a cutout, and this will be our stencil so that we can make sure our heart, it looks really nice when we're finished. You're going to need a paintbrush. And we're going to need it for two reasons. We're going to use the paintbrush on this end, but we're also going to use this end. You may also have been given a piece of dowling. A dowel is just a name for a stick that has a flat end on it. And when we use the end of the paintbrush, some of you might choose to use the end of, this is actually chopstick, but you can use a piece of dowling from the hardware store to make your dots on the painting. You're also going to need some masking tape. You're going to have to pick the colors that you would like. You need black, white, and two other colors. Today I'm going to use a dark blue and a light blue. And you can get these paints from the dollar store. They're just normal crafters paints. It's always good to have some paper towel, just in case you make a mess, then you can quickly clean it up. You are also going to need something to put your paint in. I'm using little tiny containers here today, but you can use a paint palette, or you can use some wax paper, or a paper plate to put all your paints in. And we're going to do a little bit of mixing today as well. You will also need a hair dryer if you haven't pre-painted your background. Some of you might choose to do that, but if you don't, and I haven't today, I'm starting with a blank one, it will help speed up the drying time in your painting. And of course, whenever you're painting, you always need some water so that you can clean off your paintbrushes. But the water is also good to make sure if you're not using your paintbrush, you can leave your paintbrush in there so that it doesn't harden and you can reuse your paintbrush another time. So let's get started. We're going to start with our background, and I decided I would like a light blue. So I'm going to start with that and put it in my container. This one is a little bit empty, so I might need to use an extra one. There we are. So put your paint in, and you see, when you put your paint in your cup, you don't need a lot. A little bit can go a long way. Then take one of your paint brushes. A fat one would be nice. This one is about 3/4 of an inch. And just start putting your paint on your canvas and color your background. We want it to be a solid color all the way over. And you see, I don't know if you could see that there, but there's kind of streaks. So we're gonna paint it all the way, and then we're gonna come back in a bit and go over it again so that we don't have any streaks and it's a solid color when we're all done. And if you have a canvas like mine, it's really important to paint the sides as well. And that way, if you hang it on the wall, you don't have just a little white part showing. It looks a lot better if you paint the sides. So we're going to paint the sides as well. Do your best to, you can put this on your table, use some newsprint underneath it, and then you shouldn't have a problem like I have where I could get my hands all dirty right at the beginning. But I'm holding this up for you so you can see exactly what we're doing in the painting. And you want to be careful not to put too much paint at once. I know it's easy to want to put lots of paint on, but if you put on too much right away, it might not dry as fast. And we are going to use our hair dryer to help it dry, but you won't have to use the hair dryer as long if you don't put on too much paint. Also, if you don't put on too much paint, you'll be able to have more paint for your next project. So you see I'm going over in there, there's little spots where it's a little bit whiter, and I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have white showing through anywhere. And again, I don't want to forget my sides, so I'm making sure that's covered. And today I picked blue because I actually did this class with some other kids, and one of the kids chose a light blue background with dark blue dots, and I thought it looked really nice, so I thought I would try those colors today. So there we are, we have all 4 sides painted. I missed a spot there. And I have some spots that are still white, so I'm just making sure it's covered all the way. And when you're happy with the way it looks, because I'm holding it, I took some of it off there, then you can take the blow dryer and dry it up. Like I said, the water is good to put your paintbrushes in, because this way you can use your paintbrushes again. Sometimes paintbrushes get left out and then they harden and you can never use them again. You have to throw them in the garbage. Oh, there we go. So we're going to take our blow dryer and just like that. And you want to move your blow dryer around just a little bit so it doesn't get too hot in any spot. Now you'll see on the side of my canvas here, I have a little bit of a spot that is really thick paint. So that's going to take a long time to dry. So I'm going to take a brush and just kind of smooth that out a little bit, and then it'll dry faster. And this has dried really, really fast. It only just takes a couple minutes for you to dry your canvas. So give it a little bit more. have to secure everything down. Some stuff is blowing away here. So it doesn't take very long for you to blow dry it. I can touch it already, and I have a couple little lines there. Those are slightly wet. But we're going to do our next step, which doesn't need to be with this canvas, and let it dry a little bit more while we do the next step. So I lost my paper when I turned on the blow dryer. It's here on the floor. And this is the next part that you're going to need. You're going to need your paper that has a heart, and we're going to have to cut that out. So you need a pair of scissors, and I find it handy to fold a heart in half. That way I can cut right into the middle of my paper, because we're going to use the outside of the heart, not the inside. So we'll go on the inside of the heart, and it should be a perfect match in there. And just go around the outside edges. If you need help, you can ask a grown-up to help you with the scissors. Or you can have this cut out before, or we've started the video and maybe right now you're playing a little catch up, just drying off your painting. Another good way to dry off your painting is just to wave it in the air if you don't have a blow dryer. And that can work pretty fast, but a blow dryer is definitely a faster option. So now that we've cut out our heart, we have just the outlined shape there, and we're gonna put that on our canvas next. But to put it on and to keep it in place, we're going to need some tape. So I have masking tape here. You could use some clear tape if you have that. Both should work. You do need to be very careful that your paint is dry, because we're going to put it around our canvas, and it might even be on some of the parts where you just painted. But if you do put it on your canvas, you can make it touch some clothes on your body so that it doesn't stick too much. That takes little pieces off of your clothes, lint, and will make it just a little bit less sticky. So you're going to line up your paper just like that, and we want to make sure the heart is in the middle of the painting. So if I put a little fold there, I can see where the bottom is, and that seems pretty close to the middle. If you need a grown-up to help you, go ahead and ask somebody to help you out. But we want this to stay in place while we're doing our painting, so we're going to take some of the tape that we just rolled up. We're going to put it underneath and make sure we hold that in place. So we need to make a few more rolls of tape. You can if you want. You can also put it around the edges, which is a good idea, because in case it does pull at the paint underneath, it's a lot safer that way, and you would only be wrecking the sides of your painting and not the front of your painting, because we are going to take this paper off later. So go ahead and make sure you put it on the other side as well. I think 4 pieces of tape is a good number of pieces of tape. And just make sure it's nice and flat here. You don't want it bubbling up, so if I didn't have it flat, it might be hard to work with. We're going to use this as a guide to help us to know where to put our dots when we put them on the canvas. The next thing you're going to need is, if you have little cups, you're going to need another little cup, and you can add some paint into that. I've picked my other color to be dark blue, but you should also have some black and white. And we are going to go from a dark color to a light color or a light to a dark. You get to decide which one you would like to do first. I think I'm going to start with white on the outside, just like I did on this one. And then I'm going to add a little bit more blue and a little bit more blue. And then I'm going to have just blue and maybe black in the middle. So what we're doing is we are tinting. So when you add a little bit of white from your normal color of blue, you're lightening it up. And if you add a darker color with black, then you're darkening it. And that's all you need to do when you tint something. So now we need the end of your paintbrush or your chopsticks. I'm going to try chopsticks. I've never tried them before. There are other things that you can use if you'd like to. For this one here, I used a Q-tip. The Q-tip though, I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of hard to see. Sometimes I got little tails coming off of my little circles here, and I want my circles to look really sharp. So I found something that has a flat end, can be really helpful in making dots. So like I said, I'm going to start with white, and I'm going to do dots around the outside first. And again, you don't need a lot. You just need enough to get the end of your brush or your dowel or chopstick wet, and you can always add more paint. So I also have a piece of paper, or I'll just use a heart, the inside heart here. Sometimes you want to do a practice dab and make sure your dabs look nice. So I know I'm doing white on white, so it's hard to see, but if you want to do a practice, you can do a practice first. You could also practice on the outside edge. So I like to start in the middle, either at the top or the bottom, and you just need to do a little dab. And at home, you should be doing this on a flat surface on a table. Here I have to hold it up for you. One of the things I'm a little worried about when I'm doing this video with you is if my paint is going to run. So if I tilt back a little bit, I'm just trying to be careful there. But if you have too much paint on your dowel and you tip it over, it might run, and we don't want that to happen. So the reason you want to put it flat on a table is so that all your dots still look like dots and they aren't running little strings coming down your canvas. So you want to do, you could probably do 2, 3. So once I get to my third one, it doesn't look as nice. So you're going to need another dab in there. 2, 3, dab. 1, 2, 3. And you want to dab about every 3 times into your fresh paint. And that is because you'll notice your dots keep getting smaller as you go along. And if you don't like a dot like this one, you can just go right back over it and fix it up. So just go all the way around the outside of your heart. I'm not sure if you chose to use black or white, but whatever color you chose, go all the way around the outside of your heart. And you'll notice sometimes I got 4 dabs out of that, sometimes only 3. But just remember to keep putting fresh paint on at the end of your paintbrush or your dowel. And stick close to the edge. When I taught this class with some kids before, I think they found it really hard to stay close to the edge. Some of them did, not all of them. But if you stay close to the edge, make sure you're not touching the edge. But if you're close to the edge, then you will get a nice heart shape in the end. And I'm almost done the outside here. I hope yours is coming along really nicely too. There we go, all the way around the outside. And I didn't like this dot, so I'm gonna make it a little bigger there. And we have the whole outside done. Now at this point, when you have the whole outside done, you could take this paper off if you want to, but we can wait a little bit longer before we take it off. And I'm gonna leave mine on for now, so you can as well, unless it's bothering you. But now we know what the outside shape is. And again, be careful not to get too close to the edge. If you do get too close to the edge, you could, you don't get a full circle. So you want to make sure you get full circles, because this is pointillism that we're doing today. And pointillism is about the dots, or about the points that we're creating. So like I said, I wanted to tint my color a little bit, and I'm going to tint into a light blue. So I'm just going to add a little bit of blue. And you need to mix it all the way so that you have no streaks in your paint here. So I have a light blue, but I think I want it a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue into it. But you want to make sure that you have enough paint to do the entire row of dots, because if you don't mix enough, it's really hard to mix the exact same color that you were just using. And in my light, almost looks purple. It's kind of a periwinkle color. It's a nice color. Also, if you don't want to get white in your next row, this is a great place to use your paper towel. And you take your paper towel and you can wipe off your piece of dowel or your paintbrush. And of course you have the water there so that you can clean it off as well. So here we are, we have our new color and we're ready to do the next row. It can take a while for your dots to dry, so you need to be very careful. And we don't want to use our blow dryer right now, because the blow dryer can make some of the really wet ones drip. And like I said before, with working up like this, I'm afraid of it dripping. But when you put a blow dryer on your painting, it really can blow it everywhere and it might mess it up. So we need to let the air dry our dots here. So when you reach in, you're going to have to be very careful to make sure that there's some space between you and your dots. You don't want to mess that up. So we're going to start on our next row of dots, just like that, starting at either the tip here or at the bottom, and working your way around. And I don't know if you know any artists. There are actually some famous artists that do artwork like this. And before I got ready to make this video for you today, I was thinking about who are the Canadian artists that create artwork with pointillism. And there's actually a really famous gentleman. His name is Alex Coville. And he has made some very famous paintings, and you can find them, I believe it's at the AGO in Toronto, and see some of his work there, or at least it was there at one point in time. And what he does is he takes all these dots and he makes some amazing pictures. And when I'm done my row here, I actually have one of his famous paintings that I'd like to show to you. But we're gonna get this row all done. And I don't know what you can see at home, but I did get a little tail on one of those there. Mistakes happen, that's all right. We're just gonna do our very best. If you really want to, you can go back with your original first color and you can touch that up, but I'm not gonna do that. And you have to wait for it to dry to fix those up. But you know, I think it's all right when there's mistakes in paintings. Sometimes it makes your artwork just a little bit more interesting and unique. So sometimes mistakes are okay. There was a painter who used to call them happy little mistakes. And there we go. I have my whole row finished there. And in case you're still working on yours, I am going to show you that painting I was telling you about. I cleaned off my dowel again, so it's ready for the next one. And here is my picture here. This is the picture, and you probably wouldn't believe it, but that is made with lots of tiny little dots. And this is called To Prince Edward Island. So there's a ferry between Nova Scotia and PEI, and you can travel there. And this was the place that Alex Colville decided to make a picture, just looking towards Prince Edward Island. It's kind of a fun journey if you ever get to go on that. I've been able to do that before. And you might see down here, I have a coin. I learned that this artist, Alex Colville, made the coins, the designs on the coins from when Canada turned 100 years old. I had no idea about that. And I had a quarter to show you too, but my daughter was looking at it, so I think it's been moved, but it has a Mountie on it. So there's some really neat things that Alex Colville did. We are going to do our next color, and we're just going to add in a little bit more blue. Oh, I've got a lot more blue. Let's see how that turns out. And mix it in. So you want your next shade of blue just to be a little bit darker than your last row. So here we are, starting at the top and working our way around and making another row. And you know, something else that this makes me think of is there is a part in the Bible where there is a person named Abram. You might know him as Abraham because Abraham, at the time of the story, known as Abram, he was sad because he had no kids and he really wanted kids. And God made a promise to him. And the promise was that he would have as many descendants as there were grains of sand on the beach, or as there were stars in the sky. Could you imagine having that many kids? Well, he didn't have that many kids, but he had that many grandkids and great-grandkids and great-great-great-great-great-grandkids. And that's what descendants mean. So God made that promise. And at the time, Abram was pretty old when he had no kids. And that's when God made the promise. And he wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but it did. And he did have one child. But that one child had more children, who had more children, who had more children. And God kept his promise. So when I look at a painting like this, when I'm putting all these dots, it kind of reminds me of how there are so many little grains of sand or stars in the sky. And all of those grains of sand add up to something really big. And for our painting today, we are making a whole bunch of tiny little dots into something really special, and that's our heart today. So go ahead, whenever you're ready, go to the next color. You always need to add in a little bit more blue. But I think this next row, I'd like it to be this exact color. So I am going to start fresh with just this blue in here. And then from now on, I'm going to add black for every row. So it's going to be a little bit darker from this. So here we go again. Just do your next row around the inside to make your heart. And I'm noticing I have one dot here that really wants to run because I'm holding it up. So I might hold it upside down for a little while just to make sure it tries running a little bit in the other direction. And there I made a little mistake there. Mistakes happen. It's okay if you make some. But just do your very best. And keep coming around the outside and dipping your paintbrush or your dowel every 3 or so dots. So there we go. We have another row. We have a little character dot in there. And we're going to add some color for our next dot. We're going to tint it a darker blue. And black makes a big difference, so I put, if you can see that, just a little bit of black. But you don't want too much. So I would say about 1/4 the size of the amount of blue that you have in there. It's turned kind of gray, and I think it's a little bit too dark for me. So if you go too dark, you can always go back to your blue and add in a little bit more blue. And it's easier to go back and add a little bit more color if you don't put too much paint. If you filled this full all the way to the top, it would be really hard to be adding more colors if you didn't quite like the shade of blue that you have. So here we go, and again, I don't want too much paint on there. And I am going to hold it upside down again. Doesn't matter which direction you hold your painting when you do it, especially when you have your outline here helping guide you where to go. And when you get to the inside and you're making your dots, it goes a lot faster because we have a smaller heart here on the inside than we did on the outside. Oh, I need to turn it again. It's hard to, you still have to be careful not to touch all your other dots, and it was a little too far for me to reach so that I didn't touch my other dots. So there we go. And now you see there's just a very tiny spot left, so I think I'm going to go straight to black next. And I do have one more here that I can use just black. And I didn't put very much black in there at all. Again, you don't need very much, but you can always add more paint if you need it. And then we'll just put some dots right there in the middle. I think I can only get one row. I can't go all the way around the outside. Tiny dot there. There you go. So now we have completed it and we've got all those dots to help make our heart for today. So the next step that you need to do is to take your paper off. If you're satisfied with your heart, you need to be careful when you take it off, because remember, all these dots are still wet. And when we're doing pointillism, we have little tiny piles of paint and it will take a while. And remember, we can't use the blow dryer because the blow dryer could spread all our dots all over the place and then we'd have splatters and it wouldn't look quite like what we're looking for. So be very careful when you take that off. Got my tape wrapped around really well here. You have to be very careful if you're taking it off when it's still wet. So there we go. And there you can see you have your perfect heart there. And see that I had that one spot where I put a piece of tape and it didn't wreck it or anything, but the one I put around the side did take off a little bit. But you can always go back and take your starter color and fill in those spots there and fix that up right away. And if you do need to do that, use the blow dryer and make it ready for you for the next step. Now you see here in this painting, I have some dots that go all around the outside, and you can choose to pick the black or blue or whatever color that you would like to. And today I think I would like to put some of those blue dots. So we'll put blue dots around the outside. But for this one, I didn't put extra tints in it. I didn't change the color at all along the way. If you would like to have some darker blue and lighter blue, maybe change the colors like this one. So you can go from, this would be with the colors we're using, like light blue going to dark blue. And this one also has a bit of a different dot pattern in it. But we're gonna go with all dark blue. And that would be just this blue from our canister here. Another idea, actually, just thought of that you could do is you could start and go from the black and then go darker out. There's lots of options, and when you're creating art, it's always fun to be unique and different, and that's all right. And here's the good thing, if you are using a plate, then you just need to use one plate when you're adding in your colors. Because I want just my solid blue. I can't use any of these right now. I also can't go and wash my plates because I'm doing this video with you right now. You might be able to pause this and run and clean it up, but maybe not. So hopefully you still have room on your plate for your different colors. And now all we need to do is just go around the edge with all of our dots and complete our painting. And maybe you're at the point where you look at your painting and you say, oh, I love it just the way it is. And you only want to do the heart. That's okay. And that looks beautiful too. So there's lots of ways you can create and complete your art, and it will look beautiful whichever way you end up making it. And I may just go around and do one row for today, and then it will be up to you if you want to do more dots on your painting or not. So it'd be great to see what your paintings look like when you're finished. I hope you're happy with what you've made, but if you're not, that's okay if it's not exactly what you made it to be, because today we learned something new. We learned about a technique called pointillism, and it can take time. It can take a lot of work, but you can make some beautiful stuff. And I have to confess, you know, when I make my paintings, I don't make them perfect the first time, every time. It takes lots of time and practice to make things look the way that I want them to. And we're almost done there. There we go. So I don't know, you can keep going around the edge or not. It's up to you how you complete your painting. One thing that can be really important when you're finishing your paintings is to sign your name. That way we know who is the creator of the masterpiece. The other thing I love about our painting that we've created today is that it is a heart, and it does remind me that Jesus loves me, and you know Jesus loves you too. So I did tell you the story today about Abram and how he had just one child, and at the time even no children, and he ended up having so many descendants. But this does also remind me about Jesus, and that Jesus loves me and he loves you too. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. It was really fun to do this painting tutorial with you, and I hope you keep enjoying your camp this week. I'm sure you've had lots of great experiences, or if you have another video that you'd like to do, that would be great. So many fun things to do this summer, or if you just have a day off. So have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining me today.